Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Livia, and I'm here to present the token engineering stakeholder study. So, Ponzi, Ponzi, Ponzi. When I talk to friends and people who are not in Web3, that's what everybody thinks about crypto. That is just a Ponzi scheme that is just making the rich even richer, and it's a fun game for investors. It's all about being early in the game, and it's so complicated to understand, and et cetera, et cetera. And there's either a story of someone who invested a lot of money and lost everything, or the infamous, whoa, you work in crypto, what do I invest on? I would love to tell them, oh, don't worry, this is not happening anymore. We have such rigor in the space because now everybody understood the importance of token engineering, which is a nascent transdisciplinary movement concerned with the creation of ethical token-based socioeconomic systems. And they would look at me and ask, yeah, but what does that mean? And that's what I've been asking myself. I've been deep in the token engineering space for 3 years now, and I still had so many questions without answers. And I'm here to present the early findings of the stakeholder study that was born out of the need to better understand what token engineering entails and what are the challenges and needs faced by practitioners in order to advance the field so ethical and safe cryptocurrencies can exist in the world and not just Ponzi schemes. So the study is funded by the Token Engineering Commons, and it's a collective effort since its inception to this moment, where I'll share some of our insights. The primary research question we had was, what is token engineering? So we recruited participants who were identified by our team and recommended by other participants as token engineers. And overall, we interviewed 41 individuals based all over the world with various backgrounds, all contributing to the field. And this is a map of where they are spread around, so it's a good spread. The methodology we used is rooted in constructive grounded theory approach, which focuses on exploring new or emergent phenomena. We ask questions about participants' career journeys, their view of the field, and specific questions about ethics, diversity, finances, AI, and many others. And we are 3 social researchers looking at all of this data in a constant comparative method. And this is just a teaser that of the final report that's being written, and it's going to be shared soon. So I'll briefly cover definition, practice, step-by-step, challenges, needs, and future. Did it? I think I can't. Oh, I clicked something wrong here. Unfortunately, I can't tell my friends that Ponzis are not a thing in crypto anymore. Ponzi, Ponzi, Ponzi became a cute nickname in our research team to refer to some of these challenges mentioned by a number of our participants. So to quote a few, we can't, as an industry, just keep churning out Ponzis upon Ponzis upon Ponzis. Nobody's going to take us serious. Ponzi-based designs as an area where there can be a potential ethical mismatch between what a particular company may want and be asking from a token engineer to create incentives that maximize revenue within the system. And that may come from creating incentives for activity greater than what an agent would naturally spend based on the fundamental product itself, which basically means we will be selling more value than we are producing. And a lot of companies reach out to me, and when I put myself out there, I think a lot of them had really bad token models, basically Ponzi schemes. Ethically, I was very confused as to what I should be doing in any of those scenarios. Ethics is a key aspect of the study. Participants mention ethics in answers to multiple questions, and not only those referred to ethics. It seems to be intrinsic to the definition of token engineering. And yesterday, someone told me, oh, token engineering sounds like a niche term. Why not just using mechanism design or tokenomics? And even though a couple of participants didn't like this term, there was a major agreement on the importance of engineering as a word that carries a benchmark for ethics and safety when it comes to building public infrastructure. So This quote strikes it well, that for me, token engineering was a Schelling point in the ethics space, not a new technical field. The extent to which we work on designing the automated procedures entrenched within our emerging organizations is awesome, but token engineering is, in my opinion, exists to bring attention to those ethics and those sort of, design and validation practices that undergird public infrastructure and other sectors to Web3. The name engineering is not enough to ensure an ethical stance, though. Diversity and inclusivity is fundamental, as exemplified in this story, where a participant shared, when asked about diversity, a story about how in the 60s in New York City, engineers were building a bridge in a fancy area, in a fancy beach, and the bridge was purposely built too low, so only cars could cross and buses would stay out of it. And buses represented a lower class, so that was a built-in an unethical practice in the design of this bridge. So if we want to ensure engineering to be ethical and safe, we need to have diversity in the field. And what is token engineering really? Like, what is the practice? So although not all our participants agreed there was a step-by-step to the practice, there was a substantial cohesion on these steps: discover, design, verify, deploy, maintain. And it's important to highlight that all of these processes are iterative, and there's not necessarily a linear order to them. And just a fun fact, this image was what Midjourney gave me when I prompted token engineering practice, which looks quite accurate. It's like super complex, but looks like a fun park. So let's dive in. What is this step by step? How many people here know what token engineering is or have heard about token engineering? Okay, you're all in the right room. That's great. So discover. The discovery phase was described as the initial contact with the client, so trying to understand what is actually needed, so starting to put conversations into diagrams. In this phase, we heard challenges like, oh, it's too complex what we're communicating, clients don't understand, or clients have no clarity about what they want, and that takes a lot longer than we expected in this phase. So this is a great place for you to explore your assumptions. So ask what incentive problem you're actually trying to fix in fixing society, what is actually broken, and why do you want to fix it? What does it mean to you? Sit with that for like a month, maybe not that much. Be very, very clear, what is the incentive problem? What incentive structure is actually broken? Why do you want to fix it? Why are you well placed to fix them? And only then you might begin a project. And then you go to the design phase, where value flow diagrams are refined and translated into math specifications. So this is where models are going to be built, and you should consider agents, actions, behaviors, reactions, and how incentives are placed, and leave space for adaptation. Run simulations and reiterate as needed. A couple of participants alluded to only using a token when there is no other way. So the token is not the meal, it's the seasoning. It can bring out the flavors of food, but you can't be nourished just by eating salt. It can enhance what's there. So who is creating the value, and how can you distribute tokens to value creators? And then who is consuming the value, and how they're broadly paying with tokens to consume that value. And finally, the models are only as good as the assumptions you have. So now you're implementing the assumptions that you were bringing up in the discover phase. And verify, I want to start by sharing this quote of a tenured participant, that analog verification isn't as common of a thing anymore. Isn't a common of a thing yet in token engineering. And that's actually where a lot of the problems still exist. Many hacks that we've seen in the last year and a half for DeFi type hacks, where it's about exploiting incentives. In analog verification here, he refers to auditing the system as a whole. By understanding just the parts of the system, you don't get to understand the entire system. So verification is where you test different scenarios before deployment. And deployment, finally, is the phase where everything you planned so far is going to be put into practice, and is where humans are introduced in the system, which is not a little thing. So it is second, third order effects of incentive alignment that are kind of unknown until you actually deploy. And so it's one of those adages of like no plans survive contact with reality. So no matter how well you construct or you understand what the incentives are, there's always people doing things in a way that you don't expect them to behave. And finally, that's where it comes the maintain part. I seem to... The maintain part, that is where how you're dealing with the humans and how they're using the systems. So this is about the longevity of the system. After deployment, it is the system operating as intended? Economies are dynamic, complex systems, they are alive, and something will always need to be changed. So gathering data and feedback, monitoring, and adapting the metrics and improving the metrics upon the design is very important. So the structure doesn't need to be changed or redesigned or re-engineered. You're simply applying a governance surface or reparameterization in the existing structure. So it's good that you leave space for these adaptations in the design phase, and that the adoption of the system as a dynamic living entity is always going to require disciplines that you might not otherwise have thought are important. The post-engineering stage, let's say the maintenance of the system stage. And that comes to the multidisciplinarity of the field. And all of these phases, so many expertises were needed to get to the point where the system is functioning correctly, optimally. And this token engineering flower represents well a lot of what we heard from participants, but there was still a lot more than what is there that we're going to bring more in depth in the report. And also, we understood that token engineering is not as much of a role as it is a team. So there is a token engineering team with multiple expertises. And if we could call token engineering a role, maybe we would risk pointing back to the verification point, that is a system auditor. So someone that can look at the whole system and point, oh, maybe this part is wrong, maybe this part is flawed, that's where we need to fix. Someone that can be liable for the system as a whole. So challenges, needs, and future. There's a lot to cover here, so I'll just paint a little bit on it, the need of provenance. So what are the stories behind the models? How can people understand the process that went into putting token economies together? If people understand that process, maybe it will be clear to them how to create token economies standards. 25 out of 41 of our participants mentioned the need for standardization. This also comes from poor data accessibility, hard to access, which projects worked on what, how they did things, how to compare models between what is successful or not, and how to build standards from there. And regulatory clarity. So regulatory concerns were very present. If we're talking about designing safe and ethical systems, lack of clarity around regulation becomes a real block to knowing the limits of your design space. And education, which was unanimous. Everybody mentioned how education is important and highlighted the need for more educational materials, and also how challenging that is to create materials in such a fast-changing environment for multidisciplines where most of the experts are super busy with everything they're doing. So kudos to Token Engineering Academy, who has been creating amazing materials for a long time. And yeah, I'm going to close with this quote of what you didn't do token engineering audit. You didn't have anyone review the system. You say it's going to do this, but like, did anyone actually say that? Because, okay, hacking, didn't find any bugs. But like, you know, it's like, how Ponzi is this? So you can check our much more information about what's happening in the Token Engineering Commons. There is a QF grant round coming up, and there's many initiatives from the Token Engineering Academy, Token Engineering Commons. There is a bar camp on token engineering on the 22nd. There is a whole track on token engineering here on the 19th. And if you sign up here, you can receive the report. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Quick questions. Processing. Here we go.
In the report, what were the most, let's just say, juiciest, controversial findings that you had? Like, anything that really you were surprised at, or you feel might be like contradictory to most people's beliefs?
That's a good question. I think, well, maybe something that was surprising is that there was an anomaly, but there was a couple of people that didn't think that ethics was something important, even though that was mentioned by the whole majority of who we interviewed. So that was an interesting point. And I think also something juicy was maybe this big E engineering, little e engineering, of like big E engineering being all the fields of engineering that are concerned with ethics and the build of public infrastructure, and little e engineering being like software engineering that is move fast, break things, and see later how you fix them. And some people mentioned that being like, oh, it feels like that's how the space is operating now, and this doesn't look good.
Yeah, actually we have to close, because there is another speech, but if you want to keep going with questions, I think she's available also, not on stage. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.